Hey everyone! Today we're diving deep into something that might be hard to hear, but trust me, you need to know this. We're talking about 11 brutal signs that your relationship is over, and we're approaching it through the lens of ancient Stoic wisdom. Why? Because sometimes the hardest truths lead to the greatest growth. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for, and, more importantly, how to handle it like a true Stoic warrior. Before we dive in, let me tell you what's coming. First, we'll explore the early warning signs that most people completely miss. Then we'll get into the heavy-hitting signs that scream it's over. And finally, I'll share the Stoic principles that will help you not just survive this, but actually thrive through it. Drop a comment right now with ready if you're prepared for some hard truth. Sign number 1, the silence that screams. When Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of honest communication, he wasn't just talking about state matters, he was talking about this. That deafening silence in your relationship? Yeah, let's talk about it. The silence I'm talking about isn't just those comfortable, quiet moments. We're talking about that heavy, uncomfortable silence that fills the room when you're both there. You know, the one where you'd rather scroll through your phone than start a conversation. Here's what makes this silence so deadly. It's not just about not talking. It's about all those unsaid words piling up like a wall between you. The Stoics taught us that nature abhors a vacuum, and in relationships, that silence gets filled with assumptions, resentment, and distance. What's really happening here is a breakdown in what the Stoics called rational discourse. When you can't or won't share your thoughts with your partner, you're essentially saying that the relationship isn't a safe space anymore. Think about your last 3 conversations with your partner. Were they deep and meaningful, or just surface-level logistics about who's doing the dishes or what's for dinner? This is crucial because Epictetus taught us that meaningful relationships require genuine exchange. It's wild because most people think this silence is just a phase or that it's normal. But let me tell you something. The Stoics were big on facing reality head-on. And the reality is that comfortable silence and toxic silence are 2 very different things. The most painful part? This silence often starts so subtly that you don't even notice it creeping in. One day you're sharing your deepest thoughts, and the next you're both experts at avoiding real conversation. It's like a slow-motion train wreck that you don't see until you're already in it. Sign number 2, the disappearing future. Remember when you used to spend hours talking about your future together? The house you'd buy, the places you'd travel, the life you'd build? The Stoics taught us that our plans reveal our true priorities, and this sign hits right at the core of that wisdom. It starts subtly. Maybe you've noticed that your partner changes the subject when you bring up future plans, or perhaps you're the one avoiding these conversations. Either way, the future that once seemed so clear is now becoming fuzzy and uncertain. This isn't just about having different goals. That's normal, and something the Stoics would say can be worked through with reason and compromise. No, we're talking about the complete evaporation of shared future planning. It's like the relationship has an expiration date that nobody wants to talk about. Epictetus would tell us that this is particularly revealing because our true values are shown not in our words, but in our actions. When someone stops investing in the future of a relationship, they've already begun the process of emotional withdrawal. The painful truth? When the future disappears from your conversations, it's often because one or both partners have already started imagining a future without the other. It's like watching the credits roll before the movie's even finished. You might be thinking, but we're just focused on the present. And while the Stoics did emphasize living in the present moment, they also understood the importance of purposeful planning. There's a difference between mindful presence and avoidance. The most telling aspect? Notice how your heart races or your stomach tightens when someone asks about your future plans together. Your body knows something's wrong before your mind is ready to admit it. Sign number 3, the emotional echo chamber. In true Stoic fashion, let's face this hard truth. Emotional resonance is the heartbeat of any relationship. When that heartbeat becomes irregular, we need to pay attention. You know that feeling when you share something exciting or devastating, and your partner's reaction feels rehearsed, like they're reading from a script, rather than truly sharing your emotional experience? That's what we're talking about here. The Stoics emphasize the importance of authentic human connection, and this sign reveals its absence. It's not just about having different emotional responses, it's about the complete disconnection between your emotional worlds. What's happening is a phenomenon I call the emotional echo chamber. You express feelings, they bounce back hollow and empty, creating a void where understanding used to live. Marcus Aurelius would recognize this as a failure of true companionship. This emotional disconnect often manifests in small moments. You're excited about a promotion, and they give a cursory, "That's nice." You're worried about a family member, and they change the subject. These aren't just communication mishaps. They're symptoms of a deeper disconnection. The worst part? This emotional distance creates a feedback loop. The less your partner engages with your emotions, the less likely you are to share them, creating an ever-widening gap between your inner worlds. You might try to rationalize this away, thinking, they're just not emotional people. But Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about understanding and processing them wisely. A partner who's completely checked out emotionally isn't practicing Stoicism, they've simply stopped investing. Sign number 4, the vanishing touch. Physical intimacy isn't just about the obvious. It's about those small, everyday moments of connection that the Stoics recognized as expressions of human bonding. When these disappear, it's time to pay attention. We're not just talking about the big gestures here. It's the small touches, the hand on the shoulder as they pass by, the quick hug in the kitchen, the way your feet used to find each other on the couch. When was the last time these happened naturally? What's particularly revealing is how conscious and calculated physical contact becomes. Every touch feels negotiated rather than natural, planned rather than spontaneous. It's like watching a dance where both partners are counting their steps instead of feeling the music. The Stoics understood that our physical existence is intertwined with our emotional and rational nature. When physical intimacy fades, it often reflects a deeper disconnection in the relationship's foundation. You might notice yourself or your partner physically recoiling from touch, creating literal space between you. These aren't conscious decisions. They're your body's wisdom speaking volumes about what your mind might not be ready to acknowledge. The most telling sign? When accidental touches become awkward instead of natural. That moment when you both reach for something and the brief contact feels like an invasion rather than a connection. This physical distance often creates a self-perpetuating cycle. The less you touch, the more awkward touch becomes, leading to even less physical connection. Breaking this cycle becomes increasingly difficult as time goes on. Sign number 5, the priority shift. Here's a truth bomb that would make Seneca proud. You can tell everything about a relationship by looking at how both partners prioritize each other. When priorities shift, everything else follows. Remember when you were each other's default person? The first one you'd call with good news, bad news, or no news at all? Now pay attention to who gets that call first, and be honest with yourself about where your partner ranks in your own priority list. This shift often shows up in the small decisions first. Maybe they're consistently choosing after-work drinks over dinner with you, or you're finding yourself preferring solo activities over shared ones. These aren't random choices, they're revelations of changing priorities. The Stoics taught us to examine our choices as reflections of our values. When someone consistently chooses other activities, people, or priorities over the relationship, they're showing you their truth through actions rather than words. What makes this particularly painful is that it often happens gradually. Like a frog in slowly heating water, you might not notice the temperature rising until it's nearly too late. One day you realize you've gone from being the priority to being an option. Here's the kicker. This isn't about being needlessly demanding or expecting to be the center of someone's universe. It's about the natural prioritization that occurs in healthy relationships versus the systematic deprioritization that happens in failing ones. The most revealing test? Look at how you both spend your free time and energy. The Stoics would say that our true priorities are revealed not in what we say, but in how we allocate our most precious resources, time and attention. Sign number 6, the values void. When Zeno and the early Stoics talked about living according to nature, They weren't just speaking about the physical world, they were talking about living in alignment with our core values. When those values no longer align in a relationship, everything starts to crumble. This isn't about having different interests or hobbies, it's deeper than that. It's about fundamental differences in how you both view life, success, happiness, and purpose. These differences might have always been there, but now they're causing real friction. What's particularly insidious about this sign is how it often surfaces during major life decisions. Suddenly you realize you have completely different views on money, family, career, or personal growth. These aren't just disagreements, they're fundamental incompatibilities. The Stoics would point out that values aren't just ideas, they're the compass by which we navigate life. When your compasses are pointing in different directions, the journey becomes increasingly difficult and ultimately impossible to share. You might find yourself constantly compromising your core values to keep the peace, or notice your partner doing the same. This isn't sustainable. It's like trying to hold your breath underwater indefinitely. The most painful aspect? Realizing that the person you love has a fundamentally different vision of what makes a life worth living. This isn't something that can be negotiated or compromised away. It's a basic incompatibility at the soul level. This values void often reveals itself in recurring arguments that never get resolved because they're not really about the surface issue. They're about deeper, irreconcilable differences in how you both view the world. Sign number 7, the trust erosion. Epictetus said that the essence of philosophy is the examination of our preconceptions. When it comes to trust in relationships, we need to examine not just the dramatic breaches, but the subtle erosion that happens day by day. This isn't always about big betrayals or dramatic revelations. Sometimes it's the small doubts that creep in, the tiny moments where you find yourself questioning their words, their actions, their intentions. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Notice how you've started double-checking their stories, scrolling through their social media, or feeling the need to verify what they tell you. These aren't healthy behaviors, but they're symptoms of a deeper problem. The foundation of trust is cracking. The Stoics understood that trust isn't just about honesty. It's about reliability, consistency, and alignment between words and actions. When these elements start to fail, the entire relationship structure becomes unstable. Sign number 8, the respect recession. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the importance of respect in human relationships. When respect disappears, everything else follows. And it often vanishes so gradually that you don't notice until it's gone. This manifests in how you speak about each other, both in private and public. Those little jabs that used to be playful now carry an edge of contempt. The eye rolls, the dismissive tone, the subtle put-downs, these aren't just bad habits, they're symptoms of eroding respect. What's particularly toxic about this sign is how it spreads to your social circle. You might find yourself speaking negatively about your partner to friends, or notice them doing the same. The Stoics would recognize this as a serious breach of the social contract that underlies all strong relationships. Pay attention to how you handle disagreements now, compared to earlier in your relationship. When respect was present, conflicts were about finding solutions. Now they're about scoring points or proving superiority. The hardest part to accept? Once respect is lost, it's incredibly difficult to rebuild. Unlike trust, which can be repaired through consistent actions, respect, once eroded, often reveals fundamental changes in how you view each other. You might catch yourself or your partner using phrases like "you always" or "you never." Absolute statements that show you're no longer seeing each other as complex, growing individuals, but as caricatures of your worst moments. The most revealing test? Notice how you both handle each other's vulnerabilities. In a healthy relationship, vulnerabilities are treated with care and respect. When respect is gone, they become ammunition. Sign number 9, the growth gap. Here's a truth that would resonate with Stoic philosophy. Relationships either grow together or grow apart. There's no standing still in the river of life. This sign becomes evident when you start noticing how differently you both approach personal growth and development. Maybe you're investing in yourself, exploring new interests, evolving your worldview, while they seem content with stagnation, or vice versa. The Stoics emphasized continuous self-improvement, but they also understood that growth needs to be compatible for relationships to thrive. When one partner outgrows the other, or when you both grow in incompatible directions, the relationship starts to strain. What makes this particularly challenging is that growth isn't always linear or obvious. Sometimes it's subtle shifts in perspective, changes in values, or evolving life goals that create an ever-widening gap between partners. You might find yourself having to dumb down your conversations, hide your achievements, or downplay your evolution to maintain peace. This isn't just uncomfortable, it's unsustainable and contrary to the Stoic ideal of living authentically. The most painful realization? Sometimes love isn't enough if you've become fundamentally different people with incompatible growth trajectories. Watch for moments when you feel like you have to shrink yourself to fit into the relationship. These are clear signals that the growth gap has become too wide to bridge. Sign number 10, the joy drain. The Stoics weren't against happiness, they just understood that true joy comes from living in alignment with nature and virtue. In relationships, this sign manifests as the gradual disappearance of shared joy and excitement. Think back to when you first got together. How often did you laugh together, share inside jokes, feel excited about simple shared moments? Now compare that to today. The absence of joy isn't just about being comfortable, it's about emotional disconnection. What's particularly revealing about this sign is how it affects your individual happiness. You might notice that you feel more alive, more yourself when you're apart than when you're together. The relationship has become an energy drain rather than a source of vitality. The Stoics would point out that while external circumstances change, the capacity for joy in healthy relationships remains constant. When joy disappears, it's often because the fundamental connection that created it has been severed. Pay attention to how you feel before spending time together. If you're filled with dread or exhaustion rather than anticipation or contentment, that's your inner wisdom trying to tell you something important. The most telling aspect? When you have to manufacture happiness for social media or public appearances, but the private reality of your relationship is joyless and gray. Notice how you both respond to good news or opportunities for celebration. If these moments feel forced or hollow, it's because the authentic joy that once fueled your connection has dried up. Sign number 11, the intuition alarm. Here's the final and perhaps most important sign, one that the Stoics would particularly appreciate because it deals with our innate wisdom and ability to perceive truth. Your gut feeling, that persistent inner voice that something isn't right. The Stoics would tell you this isn't just anxiety or overthinking. It's your rational mind processing thousands of subtle signals that your conscious mind might be trying to ignore. What makes this sign so crucial is that it often precedes all the other signs we've discussed. Your intuition might be picking up on problems long before they become obvious or undeniable. The challenging part? Society often teaches us to ignore our intuition, to rationalize away our concerns, to give endless chances, even when our inner wisdom is screaming that something is wrong. Pay special attention to recurring thoughts or feelings about your relationship, especially ones you try to dismiss or suppress. These aren't random. They're important data points that your intuition is trying to bring to your attention. The most revealing test? Notice how your body reacts when you think about your relationship's future. Physical responses like tension, nausea, or anxiety are your body's way of conveying what your mind might not be ready to accept. This isn't about being paranoid or distrustful. It's about honoring your inner wisdom and having the courage to face what it's trying to tell you. You used to talk about when we. Now those conversations have vanished, and here's why that matters. Now that you've seen all 11 signs, you might be feeling overwhelmed. That's normal. The Stoics taught us that growth often comes from facing uncomfortable truths. Remember what Seneca said? It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult. If this video hit home, smash that like button and subscribe for more Stoic wisdom applied to modern life. Drop a comment sharing which sign resonated most with you. Let's support each other in this journey of growth.